So he's commissioning the church, and almost he's leaving them. Okay, he keeps coming back because he wants to come back and encourage them, but they get on with it themselves.
Exactly.
There's no overseeing body which is going to come and say, this is the way you do it, this is what you have to do, or money you have to contribute to head office. Each church was just left on its own.
That's right.
You know, in the secular world, when people are looking for somebody to be appointed in a certain position, they're looking for character, yeah? They're looking for reputation, yeah? What's his reputation? You see it with the appointment of these people in the banks, don't you?
Yes.
What sort of character is he? What's his reputation? What's his track record?
Yes, of course.
How has he done academically? But I see these qualifications being more moral and spiritual rather than those others that you would look for in the world. In fact, I think we're probably looking more for character.
Yes.
What sort of people are these that we want to have as elders? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they're looking for people who are going to be mentors rather than overseers as such.
But you can only lead people where you've been yourself, can't
Exactly.
you?
Hence the experience you get from an older person.
That's right. And so if the Christians in the church are going to grow, then the people who are leading them have to be beyond them.
That's right.
I remember I'd been a Christian for many, many years, and I'd been pastoring for a while, when I entered into an experience of the Holy Spirit, and it just opened my eyes in a brand new way. And I can remember saying to the church, I feel as if I'm about just a few weeks ahead of you, because I was learning so much. I remember we were doing a study going through, I think it was Mark's Gospel, and as I was reading Mark's Gospel for my studies each week, I was seeing things in the chapter I hadn't seen before. And, you know, and I hadn't preached before on healings, and I hadn't preached before on the demonic. And an elder has to be a bit further down the line than the people, in order that the people should grow. And I suppose what we need to be saying in any church that we're part of is the person or persons at the top actually going to lead me deeper in my Christian life? And if they aren't, then that church has got a problem.
Yes.
That's the understanding of the elder.
Yeah.
A mature person who has experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I'd just like to look at a comparison here between 1 Timothy 3:1, if we could go there again.
Yes.
1 Timothy 3:1, and Acts 20. I know I'm jumping ahead, but it's all tied up with what we're doing. Acts 20, verse 28.
Acts 20 and verse 28.
So 1 Timothy 3:1. Are you there, Lawrence?
Yeah, 1 Timothy 3:1 says, "This is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work."
If a man desires the position. So we see the man desiring the position, Gordon. But in Acts chapter 20, verse 28, it says, "Therefore take heed to yourselves and to all the flock among which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers." So there's two sides to this. The man desires the office, having met the qualifications, then the Holy Spirit says, and that's where the prayer and fasting comes in.
That's right. Well, I have to go back to that certain synod meeting recently, and I heard a comment on another programme. I won't sort of name names, but this person said, "Isn't it ironic that before the meeting started in the synod, they prayed for the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and at the end of the meeting, they didn't want to take his advice?"
Yeah.
So, I mean, you either do believe and listen to the word, or you don't.
Yeah. Either God is God or He's not.
Exactly.
And at times you have to stand back and say, right, Lord, well, you work it out.
Exactly.
And I don't see much voting here either.
No.
No voting at all, was there?
No.
And I mean, you made reference to the calling of Paul and Barnabas, and that similarly was done, prayer and fasting,
Exactly.
by the other leaders of the church. And it wasn't left to the people to do.
Yeah, because it said in Acts there, 13 where we were, it says there were prophets.
Yes.
So what the prophets do, they speak for God.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've got a lot to learn, and maybe that's part of the problem of what's wrong within our church and congregations today. And that all came out of Acts chapter 15, if you just joined us. We're in Acts chapter 14. We're on Bible study tonight, and our passage is the end of Acts chapter 14. And, well, hopefully we're going to move into the beginning of chapter 15. And we've just been talking about verse 23 there, where it says, so this is when Paul had been back to the churches that he'd established. As he came back and went amongst them, he appointed elders in every church and prayed with fasting, and then commended them to the Lord, in whom they all believed. And the amazing thing is, he then left them.
Yes.
These young churches, he wasn't afraid that they were going to go off haywire and get themselves into a mess and close down. He had confidence that it was God.
In fact, that verse 26, it says there, for there they sailed to Antioch, where they'd been commended to the grace of God for the work which they had completed. Completed. So there's a sense of fulfillment. We've done this now. And so I see in Paul and Barnabas a relationship between them trusting God, but we also see in Paul's letter to Corinthians, he still had concern for them.
Yeah.
And as we will go through Acts, we will see that Paul once again retracing his steps.
Yeah.
He keeps coming back. He trusts God. You know, we trust you, Lord, because we've fasted, we've prayed. These are the elders. This is the church. It's your church. But I still am concerned because I was part of it. And so he's not absolved.
No.
So his predominant gifting is that of an evangelist, undoubtedly, going into a virgin territory, preaching the gospel, seeing a church established, appointing leaders, and going. But he just wants to keep that father hand upon them and just encourage them and keep nurturing them all the time.
Yeah. So what should be?
What a pattern. I wonder whether you've been used to the Lord to lead people to the Lord, and you know, whether you similarly just want to keep in touch with them and keep going back and encouraging them and building them up in the faith and just helping them in issues and problems. That's what Paul was exactly doing here in his missionary journey. And so having been to these different places, they then sailed to Antioch, where, as you just said, they had been commended to the grace of God for work they completed. And they gathered the church together. They reported all that God had done to them, and that he'd opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. And they stayed there a long time with the disciples.
Yeah. And Luke ties that up really with the start of the journey in 13:1-4, where it says in chapter 13, now in the church that was at Antioch there were certain prophets and teachers, Barnabas, Simeon, who was called Niger, Lucius of Cyrene, Manaen, and who had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul. And as they ministered to the Lord and fasted, the Holy Spirit said, now separate to me Barnabas and Saul for the works which I have called them. Then having fasted and prayed, there it is again, and laid hands on them, they sent them away. So being sent out by the Holy Spirit, they went down to Seleucia, and from there they sailed to Cyprus. And now we see they're doing it all in reverse, going back. And as you say, they've opened up the door of faith to the Gentiles.
And they're now reporting back to head office.
And they're now reporting back to Jerusalem. Yeah, that's right.
And we read all the way through, you know, great joy when they hear what's been happening and what the Lord has done.
Indeed.
Missionary meeting report. They've come back from the fields, from Africa, from Asia, wherever it is, and share the news. And we're always glad when we hear that.
Absolutely.
Well, that's great. But then we come to verse 15.